දවස් 30ක්ම unlimited Netflix බලන්න. unlimited data pack එකක් මුළු පවුලටම unlimited fun එකක් අරගන්න. අදම active කරගන්න.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, safety paramount. Menuwanguda cluster spikes past the 1,000 mark as real patient zero continues to be a question mark. A sigh of relief. Minister of Education Professor G.L. Pieris announces that grade 5 scholarship and advanced level exams will go ahead as planned. No more a plaything. Foreign Secretary Professor Jainath Kolambage says Sri Lanka will no longer be used as a geopolitical playground.
But I think we should say, no, we are not the playground. Either we should be in one of the teams, or we can be the referee, or at least the line referee.
Dropping the intelligence ball. Retired DIG M.R. Latif tells Easter Commission that STF could have acted against terrorists if state intelligence had shared attack warning. All this and much more coming up on this Wednesday, the 7th of October 2020.
Nava sunlight sakura. Then Dikukal pavathina sakura mal suandin.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando in your top stories for tonight. The number of patients from the Menuwanguda cluster has now surged past the 1,000 mark, making it the biggest coronavirus COVID-19 cluster of the country so far. Months after successfully containing the spread of the coronavirus, Sri Lanka reported a sudden spike in COVID-19 cases with the detection of new cases at an apparel factory in Menuwanguda. Health authorities say that the source of the outbreak still remain unclear as they reveal that first patient reported from the cluster may not in fact be the patient zero as previously thought. The detection of 202 fresh cases of COVID-19 has now increased the number of patients from the Menuwanguda cluster to 1,034. According to the Government Information Department, all the new patients are employees of the apparel factory. 4 among the 6 infected persons identified this evening are employees of the Menuwanguda factory. From the remaining 2, one is an employee of the Valisara branch of the Brandix factory and the other is a member of the cleaning staff at the Bandaranaike International Airport.
ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම අපිට වාර්තා වෙච්ච පළවෙනි කාන්තාවට රෝග ලක්ෂණ එන්නේ 28 වෙනිදා. නමුත් සැප්තැම්බර් 20 වෙනිදා විතර ඉඳන් මේ ආයතනයේ සේවකයන් අතර ශ්වසන රෝග තත්ත්වයක් තිබුණායි කියලා වාර්තා වෙලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට එහෙමනම් මේ කාන්තාව නෙවෙයි පළවෙනි රෝගියා. මේ රෝගියා අතර මැද කෙනෙක්. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා අපිට ඒ ආපස්සට ගොඩාක් කරුණු හොයන්න වෙනවා. අත් අවශ්‍යම මෙතන 800 ගණනකකින් කවුද පළවෙනියා කියන එක හොයන එක ඉතාමත්ම දුෂ්කර වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
Meanwhile, 3 employees of the factory in question residing in Moravatta, Kandana, Hapugoda and Kapuwatta were hospitalized this morning by the officials of the Jayala Medical Officer of Health. In the meantime, residents of Menuwanguda, Udugampala and Miniruwanguda who were diagnosed with COVID-19 were also admitted to hospital today. In addition, 351 infected patients from the factory were taken to the Tildeniya, Rambukkana, Valikanda and Kamburugamu treatment centres. In another development, the government issued notice to employees of the apparel factory who came into contact with infected individuals and the families of the virus-infected employees to direct them to quarantine centres today. To the surprise of authorities and the people present, a woman diagnosed with COVID-19 arrived at the site. Elsewhere, the Office of the Medical Officer of Health in Minuwangoda conducted PCR tests on family members of the infected, as well as state officials who are believed to have come into contact with carriers of the virus. Also, the families of the factory employees residing in Jayala, Kandana and Ekala were directed to quarantine facilities this morning. Meanwhile, with a resident of Horana who works for the factory in question testing positive for COVID-19, the 5th ward of the Horana Base Hospital, where his wife is employed, has been temporarily closed, restricting the admission and discharge of new patients. The hospital administration said that patients are being treated within the ward. Meanwhile, in the Colombo Municipal Council, PCR tests of its employees were carried out today due to the mother of an employee testing positive for the virus. An infected employee of the apparel factory had visited a house in the area of Kirimatia, Batapola in Ambalangoda and had frequented several locations, including 3 houses and a shop. Taking to social media, the infected individual identified as Gavin Vimalasiri says that he had arrived in Galle on Friday the 2nd via Kokmaduwa and reached Kahava on a bus from Mathura to Colombo. He had visited his wife's residence in Kirimatia last Saturday and attended a Bodhi Puja with his family at the Batapola temple. Vimalasiri added in the post that he returned to Kadawatha on a bus from Ambalangoda to Kadawatha on Sunday the 4th. Acting upon the information provided by the COVID-19 carrier, measures were taken to quarantine his family members and 2 members of the clergy attached to the temple. Meanwhile, Minister of Health Pavitra Vanniyarach revealed that some infected factory employees are refusing admission to treatment centres. In this backdrop, police announced strict legal action against those who conceal COVID-19 related health conditions. What's more, curfew was imposed on 17 police areas in the Gampaha, Kalaniya and Negombo divisions with immediate effect today until further notice. Accordingly, curfew will be imposed in the Gampaha, Ganemulla, Kirindiwala, Dompe, Malwatu Hiripitiya, Mirigama, Nittambuwa, Pugoda, Veyangoda, Minuwangoda, Veeragula, Valiveriya, Pallevela and Yakkala police areas of the Gampaha division. Further, the Jayala and Kandana police areas of the Kalaniya division, as well as the Diulapitiya police area of the Negombo division, will be placed under curfew until further notice. In another development, a COVID-19 infected person receiving treatment at the Ragama hospital escaped from the hospital last night. His diagnosis was confirmed by a PCR report this morning. The patient, however, was found wandering near the hospital and was readmitted to the hospital. Meanwhile, Commander of the Army Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva states that a member of the cleaning staff at the Bandaranaike International Airport is among the fresh cases of COVID-19.
මේ අවස්ථාවේදී එහෙම කාන්තාවක් කොවිඩ් ආසාදනය වී ඇති බවට තොරතුරු ලැබිලා තින ඒ ගැන සොයලා බැලුවමත් ඒකේ දැනට වාර්තා වෙලා තිබෙන තත්ත්වය අනුව ඇඟලුම් කර්මාන්ත ශාලාවේ සේවන යුතු බෝඩිමක් වෙත ගියපු කාන්තාවක් හැටියට තමයි වාර්තා වෙන්නේ. ඒ හිටපු කාන්තාවන් අතරින් කීප දෙනෙක්ට කොවිඩ් ආසාදනය වී ඇති බවටත් වාර්තා වෙනවා.
මේක අපිට ලොක්ඩවුන් එකකට යන්න වෙයිද කියලා දල වශයෙන් හරි දැනෙන්නේ නැද්ද නිකන් නිලවලට?
මේක පැය 24න් විතරට විශ්ලේෂණය කරුන් ලබනවා. මේකේ ඉන්න ඕනේ ඔක්කොම විශේෂඥවරුන් මේක බලනවා. දැනට මේ අහන පැයේ එහෙම දෙයක් පේන්නේ නැහැ.
Enjoy a very smooth shave with the Bic Easy 2 razor. Bic Easy Safeguard Surface Disinfectant. Safeguard නිරෝගී මධ්‍යවයකට.
Minister of Education Professor G.L. Pires says that the Grade 5 scholarship and the advanced level examinations will be held on the scheduled dates with all necessary precautions taken in consultation with the health authorities. He made these comments while addressing a media briefing of the Department of Government Information today. With that, several more decisions were put in place today to contain the spread of the virus. With public concerns rising over the holding of the Grade 5 scholarship examinations and the advanced level examinations, Minister of Education Professor G.L. Pires confirmed that both examinations will be held as scheduled.
එක විභාග මධ්‍යස්ථානයක පෙනී සිටින උපරිම අපේක්ෂකයන්ගේ සංඛ්‍යාව 160ක් පමණ. එම නිසා සියලු සාධක බොහොම පරිස්සමෙන් සැලකීමට භාජනය කරලා රජය තීරණයක් අරන් තිබෙනවා. මේ විභාගය නියමිත පරිදි පැවැත්වීම. අපි නිරන්තරයෙන් සම්බන්ධ වෙනවා ආරක්ෂක අංශවලට සෞඛ්‍ය නිලධාරීන්ට එයාගේ උපදෙස් අනුව තමයි මේ වැඩපිළිවෙල අපි සකස් කරන්නේ. එතකොට විභාග මධ්‍යස්ථානවල විෂ බීජ හරණය අනෙක් සෞඛ්‍ය ආරක්ෂක පියවර දුරස්ථභාවයේ මුඛ ආවරණ ඒ සියල්ලක්ම ගැන විශේෂ අවධානයක් යොමු කරලා තමයි මේ විභාග පැවැත්වීම සඳහා වටාපිටාව පරිසරය සකස් කර තියෙන්නේ. ඒ වගේම නිරෝධායනයට ලක් වෙලා තිබෙන ශිෂ්‍යයන් සඳහා විශේෂ මධ්‍යස්ථාන පිළියෙල කිරීමටත් අපි වැඩ කටයුතු කරගෙන යනවා.
ෆෝරමයක් හැදුවා. අද මේක අප්ලෝඩ් කරනවා. ඔබ සීල දෙනා දන්නවා අපිට ඕනේ තොරතුරු. ළමයා කොහෙන්ද ආවේ? මොන විදිහටද විභාග මධ්‍යස්ථානයට එන්නේ? ඒ ළමයා පහුගිය දවස්වල ගෙදර වාතාවරණය මොකද තිබුණේ? උණ රෝගයට බෙහෙතක් ගත්තද? ඒ විදිහට අපි ෆෝරමයක් හදලා අපි මේක දානවා අපේ අධ්‍යාපන අමාත්‍යාංශයේ වෙබ් අඩවියට. දාලා අපි මේක පුරවන්න කියනවා මේ අපොස උසස් පෙළ දරුවන් අපේක්ෂකයන්ටත් ශිෂ්‍යත්ව දරුවන්ටත්. යම් හේකින් ඉදිරි දවස් ගාන තුල මේ තාත්වය වෙනස් වුණොත් අපිට පොඩි අදහසක් ගන්න පුළුවන් මෙයා ඉදිරි දවස් ටිකේ මොන හරි වෙනසක් වෙනවද කියන එක.
In the meantime, Chief Epidemiologist of the Epidemiology Unit, Dr. Sudat Samaravira, says that permission should be obtained from the area PHIs and medical officers for organising any weddings.
අත්‍යවශ්‍ය නොවන සියලුම දේවල් නැවැත්විය යුතුයි. නොකර බැරි දෙයක් තියෙනවා නම් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අවමගුල් උත්සවයක් දැන්ටමත් සංවිධානය කරපු මගුල් උත්සවයක් වගේ දෙයක් කරන්න පුළුවන්. මංගල උත්සවයක් වගේ දෙයක් කරනවා නම් අපේ කරන සෞඛ්‍ය පුරුදු පිළිපදමින් තමයි කරන්න ඕනේ. පැමිණෙන සියලු දෙනාගේම සම්බන්ධතා නම, ගම, දුරකථන අංකය වගේ සම්බන්ධ කරගත හැකි තොරතුරු ලබා ගැනීම ඒ වගේ කටයුතු කරන්න ඕන. කී දෙනෙක් එනවද කියන එක තීරණය කිරීම ප්‍රදේශයේ සෞඛ්‍ය වෛද්‍ය නිලධාරී සහ මහජන සෞඛ්‍ය පරීක්ෂකවරුන්ගේ උදව්වෙන් ඒ ස්ථානයේ නරඹලා ඒ ස්ථානයේ බලලා ඒ ස්ථානයේ අනුව තීරණය කරන්න ඕන.
Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health stated that the Dr. Neville Fernando Teaching Hospital in Malabar will be used as a centre to treat COVID-19 patients and suspected cases. Furthermore, a building of the Brandix factory in Pinnavala was also converted by the Sri Lanka Army into a COVID-19 treatment centre. What's more, the District General Hospital in Matara was also designated as a centre for treating COVID-19 patients. Taking the current situation into account, the National Eye Hospital has urged the general public to restrict visits and requested them to visit the hospital only for emergencies, clinical treatment and essential services. Meanwhile, private sector pharmacies in Gampaha district have decided to recommence deliveries of medicine to homes as the curfew is imposed in several police areas of the district.
සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයේ වෙබ්සයිට් එක වෙන health.gov.lk වෙබ්සයිට් එකට ගියාම ඒ ගම්පහ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ ෆාමසි වල ලිස්ට් එක තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම උපදෙස් තියෙනවා කොහොමද බෙහෙත් ගෙන්න ගන්න කියලා. අපිට කරන්න තියෙන්නේ ප්‍රෙස්ක්‍රිප්ෂන් එක WhatsApp වලට හරි Viber වලට හරි අප්ලෝඩ් කරන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට ෆාමසි වලින් ගෙදරටම බෙහෙත් ගෙනල්ලා දෙයි. අපි ෆෝන් නම්බර්ස් ඉන්ට්‍රොඩියුස් කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ නම්බර්ස් වලට කෝල් කරලා ඉවර වෙලා මොකක් හරි ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒ ගැන උපදෙසක් ගන්නත් පුළුවන්.
In the meantime, the Judicial Service Commission has informed courts located in the areas in which the curfew is in effect to provide new dates for all cases scheduled to be heard during the days which the curfew is in effect. The Commission also instructed courts to display the new dates on notice boards at the court premises. Meanwhile, the Department of Pensions has decided to close down the department until the 10th of this month due to the current situation. Meanwhile, the Acting Inspector General of Police has established an operations centre and a control room at the police headquarters for receiving information from the general public in order to take necessary measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19 via a hotline number 1933. More news on the other side of this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back in more news. Former Special Task Force Commandant, retired Senior DIG Mar Latif denied having known of Zahran Hashim before the 8th of April 2019. But upon being questioned further by the Commission Chairman, he admitted having heard of him but stated that he never knew he was a terrorist. The former STF chief added that STF intelligence unit's reports of Zahran Hashim that were submitted as evidence to the Commission were never sent to him, and added that if the SIS had informed the STF of the threat, the attackers could have been dealt with before the tragedy occurred.
Retired Senior DIG M.R. Latif, who was the commanding officer of the Police Special Task Force at the time of the Easter Sunday terror attacks, testified before the Commission for the second day today. At the outset, the senior state counsel asked him whether Director of State Intelligence Service Nilantha Jayawardena had informed him of the foreign intelligence warnings during a 15-minute phone conversation on the eve of the attacks last year. The former senior DIG replied, "No, he didn't. If I had been informed of this, I could have taken big steps to prevent the attack." This was concrete information. We could have utilized the STF's counter-terrorism expertise, but on the evening of the 21st, a police officer at the Indian embassy showed me the exact intelligence provided the day before the attack. Then on the morning of the 22nd, I went to a meeting of the National Security Council. At that time, a list of 98 extremists suspected of the attack was presented. After the meeting, I asked Nilantha why the STF was not informed about this information. Nilantha said that there was a lack of evidence, which is why I was not informed. I told him then that we could have still prevented the attacks from the data available despite the lack of evidence. He remained silent afterwards. His silence led me to believe that he had made a big mistake. The commission then asked the former STF commander whether he had informed the STF camps in the eastern province to look into the matter after receiving the foreign intelligence warning on April 9th. He replied, "Yes, I did. I ordered them to investigate and report back to me. Normally, I give them 10 days to report back after investigations. Hence, I gave them till the 23rd of April to report back. Unfortunately, it was too late by then." Latif was then asked whether the STF intelligence unit in the eastern province did not investigate the group of extremists, including Zahran, after the 2017 Aliyar Junction clash. He replied, "The STF intelligence units are not tasked with gathering intel on national security. The STF intelligence units are tasked with gathering intel on any operations to be carried out based on intelligence gathered by the State Intelligence Service." The commission chairman then asked Latif, "Are you saying that STF intelligence did not investigate Islamic extremism?" To this, the former STF commander replied in the affirmative. Following his response, the chairman of the commission drew the witnesses' attention to 3 reports compiled by the Eastern Province Police Special Task Force intelligence units on Zahran Hashim, which had been submitted to the commission as evidence. The commission chairman then asked the witness if these reports refer to STF intelligence investigations into Zahran, which, as you, the former STF commander, claimed they did not investigate. Does this mean that the STF intelligence officers did something which they were not supposed to do? The former STF commander replied, "No." The commission chairman then asked the witness, "Why then did you, the former commanding officer of the STF, not submit to the commission the 3 reports shown today, even though the STF had been ordered by the Presidential Commission to submit reports on all investigations into Zahran?" He responded, "None of these reports were addressed to the STF commanding officer. These were reports exchanged between local level officials. These were not submitted to the office of the commanding officer of the STF. I never saw them. The STF intelligence units didn't submit any reports on anyone named Zahran to me. I had heard of the National Tawhid Jamaat, but until 9th April I had not heard of the name Zahran Hashim." The commission chairman then pointedly asked the witness how it could be true that he had heard of the National Tawhid Jamaat but not the name Zahran Hashim. Despite testifying of not having heard of Zahran Hashim before 9th April, the witness then revealed that he was aware of Zahran after the 2018 Tel Denia incident but did not know that he was a terrorist. At the end of today's hearing, the chairman of the Presidential Commission directed that notice be issued to Latif under Section 16 of the Presidential Commission Act and that he appear before the Commission in future with a lawyer. Meanwhile, the Presidential Commission was scheduled to hear evidence from retired Army Commander General Mahesh Sena Nayaka, who was the commander of the Sri Lanka Army at the time of the Easter attack today, but the testimony commenced via video conference. This was due to the former Army commander currently being in Dubai and unable to return to the country.
Foreign Secretary Admiral Professor Jayannath Columbage reiterated today that Sri Lanka cannot be a soccer ground for geopolitical powers to play around in considering the strategic location of the country at the heart of the Indian Ocean. Professor Columbage added that Sri Lanka is in the process of devising a foreign policy based on neutrality with the emphasis on control of its own strategic assets and, most importantly, the avoidance of being caught up in international power games in the region.
Foreign Secretary Professor Jayannath Columbage delivered an address at the launch of a book titled Comprehensive Maritime Security in the Indian Ocean Region, held at the Kotalawada Defence University. During his address, Professor Columbage stated that Sri Lanka needs to play the role of referee in the geopolitical football game currently being played out in the Indian Ocean by global powers.
We all know that the Indian Ocean has already become the key ocean in the 21st century. And therefore, Sri Lanka is geographically, geostrategically, geoeconomically, and geopolitically in a very important location in the Indian Ocean. For many powers, Sri Lanka is the football ground that they think they can come and play the game. But I think we should say, no, we are not the playground. Either we should be in one of the teams, or we can be the referee, or at least the line referee. Indian Ocean and our environment is all about strategic competition, the major powers versus major powers. Strategic convergence, some major powers getting together to counter another major power. Strategic dilemma for smaller, as long as we are happy to dance to the tunes of others, we will never progress. I have heard many people saying Sri Lanka is a small country, but in geostrategic terms, Sri Lanka is a big country in the Indian Ocean, and therefore comprehensive maritime security is of critical importance.
The Foreign Secretary also revealed that the government is in the process of designing a set of foreign policy guidelines based on Sri Lanka's own national interests and based on neutrality, the maintenance of friendly relations, and to avoid being caught up in geopolitical power games.
Indian Ocean is the most militarized ocean in the world. At any given time, nearly 120 warships are there. Right now, we are in the process of designing a foreign policy guidance or directives based on our national interest. Now, in that sense, we want to remain neutral, maintaining friendly relations with everyone, and not to be caught in this power game. We need to be mindful of the strategic security concerns of our neighbors in here. If we are not paying sufficient attention to that, we cannot survive. We don't have the luxury of selling our national strategic assets to another country. We have to keep control. How do we translate this into a greater opportunity to uplift the economic conditions of our people? That is another important aspect of our foreign policy.
We'll return after this short commercial break. Don't go away. Welcome back. In more news, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa says that priority in foreign employment should be given to the benefit of the employee and not just the remittances being sent back into the country. He made these comments while addressing a meeting that discussed the future plans of the State Ministry of Foreign Employment, Promotions and Market Diversification.
A meeting to discuss the future plans of the State Ministry of Foreign Employment, Promotions and Market Diversification was worked off at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. During the meeting, the President instructed officials to expedite and streamline the process of sending skilled labour armed with internationally recognised qualifications and certifications for overseas employment. The President also pointed out that a mechanism of this nature can serve to benefit not only the employee but the country as well.
පොඩි වෙනසක් කරන්න ඕන විදේශ විනිමයම නෙවෙයි මිනිහා ගැනනේ බලන්න ඒ මිනිහාගේ පවුලත් නැති වෙලා මිනිහාගේ සල්ලිත් නැති වෙලා මොන විදේශ විනිමය ආවත් වැඩක් නැහැ මූලික එක විදේශ විනිමය නෙවෙයි මූලික එක මිනිසා මිනිහාව ජීවත් කරවීම තමයි මූලික විදේශ විනිමය සෙකන්ඩරි අපි මේ ප්‍රශ්න හඳුනාගෙන ඊට එහා වැඩි තැනකට මේක ගෙනියන්න දැන් කතා වුණානේ දැන් කවුද කිව්වා ෆිලිපීන්ස් වලින් ගියාම ඒගොල්ලෝ රෙකග්නයිස් කරනවා ඒගොල්ලෝ හොඳ තැන්වල ඉන්න දැන් ඉන්න තැන ගැනම කතා කරලා දැන් ඉන්න තැනින් ඊළඟ තැනට අපි යන්නේ කොහොමද? ඒ කියන්නේ වඩාත් ක්වොලිෆයිඩ් අය යවන්නේ කොහොමද? ඒතකොට ක්වොලිෆයිඩ් අය යවුවම තමයි ඒ අයටත් හොඳ පඩියක් හම්බ වෙන්නේ. ඊළඟට අපි බලන්න ඕනේ මේ ප්‍රශ්න අඩු කරගන්නේ කොහොමද? ඒ ප්‍රශ්න එතන තියෙනකොට මෙහි ෆැමිලිස් වලත් ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවනේ. ඉතින් අපි මේවම තව තල්ලු කරලා තව ගිහිල්ලා තවත් ප්‍රශ්න ඇති කරන්න වැඩක් නැහැ.
The Ministry of Education has proposed a revision of school admission procedures aimed at increasing more pupils in each classroom. The new procedures will see grade 6 and advanced level admissions being directly overseen by the principals of government schools and will permit a host of state officials to admit pupils into intermediate classes.
The Ministry of Education has decided to revise the existing student admission procedure to schools and introduce a more transparent procedure which will enable an increased number of pupils per classroom. The proposal, which was tabled by Minister of Education Professor G.L. Pires, was approved by the Cabinet of Ministers during its latest meeting. According to the new guidelines, school principals will accordingly follow the new guidelines provided in the circulars issued by the Education Ministry in admitting pupils to Grade 1. Further, admissions based on the cut-off marks of the scholarship examination to Grade 6 in national and provincial schools and admission to advanced level classes based on the ordinary level examination qualifications will be conducted by the relevant principals. In addition, according to Circulars 37/2008 and 33/2019, pupils will be enrolled to intermediate classes with the agreement of school principals as well. Further, officials who changed residences due to work transfers, return to the country from abroad, get elected to parliament, judges in service, government specialist doctors, government medical officers, employees of the Ministry of Education, schools and allied departments, university lecturers and executive officers, Sri Lanka Education Administration and Teaching Educationist Services will be eligible to enroll students to intermediate classes. Moreover, groups who are subjected to unfair situations during the admission process and who qualified following reviews, as well as pupils with special needs and those staying at social welfare centres, will also be eligible to enrol in intermediate classes.
With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a good night.